Howdy, you delicious people. I'm here to review Mission Impossible 2. It's really interesting to talk about Mission Impossible 2 for how different it is from Mission Impossible 1, because Mission Impossible 1 feels like a whodunit, where we have Ethan Hunt that assumes he's the only one left on his team, assuming all of the others are to have been dead. But then the further and further we go along, we find out that that's not ultimately true, that there are people still from his team left alive, and they are haunting him. And by the later the movie goes, we find out who all the players are, and it becomes like a really interesting, just kind of well-rounded movie. And how we go on and we just consistently see that the people who are to work with Ethan are to not be trusted is so interesting, to where we go into the sequel and we kind of have that same play going on here, where we come to find out that the person who is to pretend to be Ethan is to kind of hijack one of his missions and try to create some benefit of himself for kind of knowing about this whole chimera thing, trying to get money off the whole antivirus thing, and off to the races we go with this very smart chess match movie that is to be like, okay, um, we gotta figure out like who's doing what and where to go from here, and yeah, it just makes for a really interesting film. This movie is not exactly unique, though. There are movies that do feel very similar to this. Like, I would go on and I would throw out, like, Transporter 2. I would probably say Laura Croft, Cradle of Life, even though that movie eventually goes on to the Pandora's Box thing that is just kind of strange. But it's kind of similar in a way. I'll throw in even, like, The Dark Knight Rises. Like, we have the whole uh, thing where we have that whole plane scene with Bane and just kind of just some action there. It kind of feels very similar to this. And I was just like, while I was watching this, I'm like, yeah, this kind of weirdly just kind of feels like Dark Knight Rises. I don't know why. So plus also you'd have to of course go on and say like a Bond movie because of yeah, like it has that kind of feel. Or Charlie's Angels, whatever you've gone on and seen in your life. So, and whatever I can tag in this movie. So, we have Ethan getting replaced by Sean, and Sean finding out about this chimera virus, and Ethan goes on to need to partner up with Naya, who is to have been Sean's ex lover. So we start to see that, like, Ethan isn't to be the focus here. That if anything, Naya is much more the focus than Ethan is. But Ethan is still going on and still trying to prove that he's as good as he is, of why he had been the focus in the first film. Well, in the sequel, he's like, well, hey, I'm gonna go on, I'm gonna just do this like this crazy, wild, extreme stuff to where like I can keep proving to people that yeah, I am that good and more and then some. And so for this movie, ultimately this movie is to be a great piece easily. We do have a lot of those like spinning car things, spinning motorcycles. Uh, we have this to be more of like the motorcycle Mission Impossible movie. And at some points we go on and we could probably see, even in this film, some stuff that is to kind of feel fairly similar. Like there's the Tom Cruise Henry Cavill Mission Impossible film where like it kind of compares to this spinning car scene going on in this film where they're just right over the cliff and Tom like dives over to get Naya from falling to her death. Like that very much reminds me of like the Henry Cavill Tom Cruise like helicopter scene where they're just kind of going on and they're kind of fighting one another, and it's just kind of very uh crazy how all that scene kind of comes together. So, but it's not the exact same, but it's similar. So, for this movie, it's smart, it's chest moving, and really it's entertaining. So, by all means, I would say check it out if you have not gone on and already seen it. So, it's available on Pluto TV. That is an easy app you can just go into, and it's for free. You don't have to have like a subscription, or you don't have to even like. You can just get into it, just watch this, and then just get out. If it's not available on Pluto TV, I can go on and give you other recommendations of other apps, bootleggish means of all kinds, and everything like that in between. But ultimately, just check it out on Pluto TV because it's easy there, anyways. So, with that said, I think it's about that time to just push into full on spoilers about this film. Uh, yeah, this movie was to go on and have like Anthony Hopkins in this film, and I'm like, is Anthony Hopkins in any of the other movies? like, I hazard to think like, no, I don't think he was in any of the other ones. Um, but if anything, I don't think it really matters, anyways, because why do they really need star power in this film? Tom Cruise is like the star power. Like they can just go on and get all these other like faceless, well, Jeremy Renner's and the other ones, but like it's also really interesting to kind of see the like the smaller parts in this movie. There is one guy who kind of plays uh Sean's like kind of henchman, and I'm like, wait a minute, like I know that actor. Like he went on and he did like Prison Breaks and like all these kind of superhero stuff, and I'm like, wow, like it's so interesting to see that guy in this film as just kind of like this lesser guy. But hey, he's in Mission Impossible too, so he's like, man, like really something is going on here with him being involved in this project. So with that said, let's just push on to blow for blow, scene for scene, because you know what I mean, Jellybean. That's all we really need to do at this point. So let's go into spoil time. Spoil time. It's about that time again to spoil this movie. Let me know in the comments below what is your favorite Mission Impossible film. Let me know in the comments below what is be your favorite movie that is to be quite similar to this, where it's to be like so many like just perfectional stunts and like it might be like a Jackie Chan film, because I know there was to be quite a bit of those films where it's just like, man, like how is it they were to be able to accomplish all these things in this film? So I would probably have to say maybe like Rumble in the Bronx or something like that has to kind of be like. But Jackie Chan, yeah, he's like a very professional. Like, how does he do all this kind of stuff? And he doesn't have a double either. So with that said, let's pause this here and go on and make our way into breaking this movie down. Thank you for watching this, because I know you may go on and wrap this up if you hadn't gone on to wrap it up. after the first 20 to 30 seconds of this review, because that's completely okay. Because at the end of the day, hopefully that will still mean a view, or that will still mean something to somebody somewhere out there besides just me. So, with that said, I think it's about that time to pause this here, and I'll whip out my cast list because there's some kind of smaller characters that I'm not quite sure exactly what their name is. So, with that said, let's pause here and let's get that all out. Alright, spoilers, everybody. So, in the beginning of this, like we start to kind of jump around to these locations because we always kind of have to do that in like these big budgety action films that have like, oh well, hey, we're Sydney here and we're this here and and like we gotta just jump over the globe because we just have to. So first off, we start in Sydney, Australia, uh, via this biosite pharmaceuticals. So we start off with a professor named Nek Horvich. Nek Horvich goes on to really just have this consistent pattern of dialogue where he talks about heroes and villains, and he talks about Bellerthon and that he created a monster called Chimera. So Nekrovich goes on to dispose of most of Chimera, but then injects one of the Chimera viruses into his arm. So he is going on and having this bit of narration in the beginning here to speak out to Dimitri, which we'll come to find is supposedly Ethan's character. So Nekhorovich is to tell Dimitri, aka Ethan, that he needs to meet up with him within a span of 20 hours so that way they can go on and get the antivirus. So, or ultimately, uh, so like this virus doesn't get out. So, we have Nekrovich that goes on to make his way outside to see all these kids and they're kind of doing this whole circle thing. And then we cut to Nekrovich on this plane, and we have Ethan sitting next to him, and we find out that Ethan is to be this Dimitri guy. But this isn't even Ethan, it's actually Sean under Ethan's face. So Ethan, or I'll say Dimitri here because he's technically Dimitri. Dimitri goes on and notices that Nekrovich is consistently watching his clock. Because, yeah, he only has 20 hours to live. So, and there's this pattern of, which eventually we'll also find is a consistent thing. And Nekrovich is to eventually say that you're sorry and I'm sorry. And Ethan will go on to say that to uh to his commander later, the guy that's kind of giving him uh the uh mission, the Swanbeck. So we go on to all of a sudden have the plane that is kind of going into some cabin pressure and going into some issues. So the captain of the plane is none other than Stamp here, who is actually to be uh, under Sean's payroll. So all of a sudden, all of these kind of oxygen masks come down from the plane, and and Nekrovich ends up asking Dmitri if he's concerned, and Dmitri just tells him, "Oh yeah, no, it's fine. Just put on your oxygen mask, and I'll see what's going on." So we start to see people start to put on their oxygen masks, and they all start to pass out. And so the captain is the only one not putting on his oxygen mask because he knows better. So the captain goes on and makes his way through the plane because really, like, there's no one going to be manning this plane soon because it'll eventually just crash and it won't really matter. So Nekrovich ends up calling Dmitri, of course, by his name, and Dmitri mentions that you should not be calling me that. And here's when Nekrovich realizes that this isn't really Dmitri. So Dmitri is to be revealed in none other than Sean. Sean goes on and throws after he takes Nekrovich's briefcase and he gives it to Wallace. And so uh, Sean kind of rips off the voice thing and then just starts talking normally, talking like himself. So the guys all start dumping out of the plane, and then all of a sudden, one of the pilots end up awakening because his mask ends up getting kind of removed. And then all of a sudden, he realizes that, oh, we're almost going to hit a cliff. I'm going to try to pull up. He doesn't pull up soon enough, and the plane ends up crashing. Cut to the next thing we see is Ethan, and he's climbing on this rock. And man, like, the rock that Ethan needs to climb up on is just so awkward and just so strange. And like it's just kind of, like I think it has to just be kind of like the most difficult possible rock that he can climb on. And eventually we just start to see how Ethan is going on and for how he's to kind of get around on this rock, he needs to go on and literally like jump these huge gaps and then eventually get to a point where he's just kind of hanging with kind of like both these arms on the side here, and then he's to just try to like relax himself so he can go on and get to the next part where he can just keep climbing. So Ethan goes on and gets to the top, and all of a sudden this helicopter ends up coming flying by, and a rocket launcher ends up shooting out this missile, and the missile is for Ethan to open up and pull out these sunglasses. So here is where uh, Anthony Hopkins' character Swanbeck ends up coming in here, and giving the classic look, well, hey, we have this mission if you choose to accept it, and goes on to uh, explain that Ethan can go on and get any members that he wants as long as he goes on and he is to have Naya a part of his team because she's going to be the key to all this professional thief. So Swanbeck goes on and says to Ethan, well, hey, the next time you go on vacation, let us know where you're going. And Ethan goes on to like, well, hey, if I let you know, then I wouldn't be going on vacation. Yeah, because if anything, when you kind of think about it, like, if you're always going to be worried that you're going to eventually have people find you, like, you're never really going to have time off. Like, you're always going to just be like, well, hey, when is it going to come? Like, because, yeah, that would happen for me. Like, I would go on and I would eventually have certain jobs where it's like you're kind of on call whenever they want to just change your schedule or do whatever they want with you. They can kind of do it because you're kind of forced because you want this job, you want to make money. But if anything, like, you really basically have completely no freedom. You have no freedom. Like, if anything, like, yeah, like they can just use and abuse you however they want. And it's kind of just like, no, like, I don't want to do a job where I'm on call. Like, I want to have a schedule and that's the schedule. Like, why is it that it takes day of to say, oh, yeah, like, hey, yeah, we have these hours for you? It's like, how is it that you guys didn't know yesterday that you could have gone on? Yeah, it's the whole thing of that where it's just like, you guys knew you had these hours. You just didn't want to give them to me. It's weird. So, pushing on here. So now we're at Spain, and we make our way into Ethan finding Naya, and like the two of their eyes meet, and all of a sudden Naya vanishes all around these people that are dancing. So we come to find that Naya has run off and she's getting ready to do this caper, this theft. The weird thing of it is Ethan already knows where she's going and already knows what she's doing. And that is just kind of strange how like Ethan is to go on and know this quite ahead of time, which is just so like makes me assume that Ethan is just kind of everywhere at all times, which is just kind of strange. So Naya goes on to have this kind of compass device that it looks like it's just coming from her makeup. And Naya goes on to use these what looks like makeup devices as these just kind of things to be able to break into these just sections of what is to be this secret uh like locked like treasure trove of things. So Ethan eventually appears alongside Naya as she's in this tub opening up this safe, and Naya is to say, it's like, oh, like, how did you get here? It's like, well, you're not the only one that can pick a lock. Like, oh, like, so you're more than a pretty face. So all of a sudden, there ends up noticing quite a bit of men that are kind of coming back and forth through this area. So they kind of have to hide in this tub. So Ethan is to reveal to Naya that he wants her to work with him. And Naya is very hesitant about going on and working with a guy like this. And eventually she says all the things of which that would go on and make her not work with him. But anyways, so Naya goes on to realize that there are three possible uh, kind of compartments of uh, this thing for her to open to get to this necklace. And Ethan knows exactly which one it is, and so he tells her, and so she opens it up. Naya goes on and slips this necklace down her dress, and then when she ends up closing it up, Ethan's like, wait a minute, don't close it up, because the alarm will go off, and immediately it does. So all of a sudden, all the security comes rushing into the room while both Ethan and both Naya are in this tub. So Ethan springs into action because these people are to know who he is, and they immediately call him Mr. Keys. So Ethan goes on to mention how, like, he was to be like the head of security this whole place, and how they were just kind of working on how safe this was. And Naya is to have had the necklace, and she's kept it in a very safe place. So eventually, as we come to find, I'm trying to make sure that okay. Um, Eventually, like, the longer that we're talking here, we're thinking that Naya is going to get away with all this and she's going to walk off with the necklace, none the wiser. But then Ethan does go on and tell Naya, it's like, oh, well, aren't you going to give back the necklace? So Naya goes on and whips this necklace out of her dress and hands it back to the guy. And he's like, oh, were you going to try to steal from me? Like, well, the thought did cross my mind, but I did give you the necklace back. So Naya's now upset that it's like, well, wait a minute. Like, I just had to go on and I had to give up £500,000 worth of a necklace. Uh, it's like, why should I go on and why should I work for you? So, plus also because of the fact that Ethan outsmarted her, how is it that Ethan is so be intrigued about wanting to hire her because of how inevitably she had gotten caught here? Uh, but Ethan was to go on and say, it's like, well, hey, like, you would have gotten caught anyways because I had figured out a way to trigger the alarm regardless, so you would have gotten caught. So Naya drives off, all upset, of course. And so as she's driving, all of a sudden, she ends up getting a phone call from the car. Naya ends up picking it up, and it's Ethan on the phone. Naya's like, how exactly did you get this number? Because even I don't know the number, because I'm sure this is a car that she probably stole. So Ethan's like, well, hey, would you like the number? Like, I'll give it to you. So, so Ethan is still going on and wanting to talk to this girl to convince her to work with him. And as Naya is just getting more and more annoyed with with Ethan here, the more that Naya is like, well, hey, if you're gonna go on and you're gonna want to hire me, you're gonna have to catch me. So now all of a sudden this becomes a race between the two of them, and they start bashing their cars into one another. Naya ends up getting to Ethan and kind of having him kind of go off road. And then all of a sudden Naya's like, ha ha ha, uh like I'm getting away from you, but then all of a sudden she's not watching the road very well. And Ethan is watching Naya ahead of him. He's like, hey, pay attention to the road, pay attention to the road, and then all of a sudden there's a car right in front of Naya. Naya has to swerve. She goes off road. And as Naya tries to course correct to get back onto the road, Ethan realizes that Naya's in danger, and so he goes on to hit her car so that way it actually prevents her from getting into a serious accident. All of a sudden, both Naya and Ethan's car connect together and they're spinning round and round they go. Yin and yang as the two of them swing. And what ends up happening is Naya's car goes off this almost off this cliff, and Naya's door opening, having her hang upon it, and Ethan has to swoop in and try to grab Naya and have the two of them just kind of sit into the car to just be like, wait, like let's just take a break here. Let's call it let's call a truce because we almost died. So Naya goes on and asks for Ethan's name, and he gives it. He says that he's Ethan Hunt. He doesn't go by some weird, goofy code name. He goes by Ethan Hunt. So it's interesting how like they barely know one another, but then they quickly end up in bed with one another. So as the two of them are talking, and Naya is talking about recruit techniques and how Ethan is to go on and say it's like, well, yeah, like this way of me going on and getting to Naya isn't exactly how we normally do things because there's a book on everything in his agency. But uh, if anything, considering how difficult it was going to be, because trying to catch a thief is probably to be really difficult, then um, if anything, like yeah, like I guess it was worth it by the end of all this. So we then cut to Ethan after going on and officially realizing that Naya is going to work for him. Now Ethan needs to know why Naya is working for him. So we all of a sudden have this religious festival that's going on with all these people that are going on in the streets, and they have these torches, and there is a obvious symbol of Jesus Christ on the cross uh, that has this kind of float thing going on. So, and Swanbeck is watching on. We have Hunt that is carving his way through the crowd here to eventually make his way to Swanbeck. And Swanbeck is kind of mentioning about how difficult it was and how much of a pain in the ass it was to get through this festival, uh, for how everybody was lighting things on fire. So they sit down here, and so Swanbeck breaks it down to Ethan why Naya is to be involved in his team. Because Naya is a former lover of Sean's, and this is the mission about trying to figure out what Sean's plan is. And Swanbeck going on to explain to Ethan about what had happened with the whole Dimitri thing and Nekrashift, um, or Nekrovich, going on and having this message, but that whole hero and villain and chimera and so on and so forth. So Ethan is to go on and feel that Naya really isn't quite built yet to go and do a mission like this. And Swanbeck is like, so it's going to be difficult. It's like, well, like we don't work in the whole mission difficult thing. We do mission impossible. So like, if anything, like difficult should be a walk in the park for you. So it's kind of interesting how we go on in this film, and Ethan at first goes on to mention how, like, well, hey, if I was to go on and take a vacation without telling anybody, there wouldn't be a vacation. And then Ethan goes on and meets up with Swanbeck and says, like, well, hey, like, yeah, next time I'll go on and I'll tell you that I'm going on vacation. Swanbeck's like, well, hey, don't bother. Because if anything, like, if you don't tell me, then it's not then it is actually a vacation. So it's kind of like this weird, goofy thing, uh, of this just kind of like, hey, you said this in the beginning, I'll say this here, and then eventually they go right back to that same saying later on. So like this movie is all about just like this weird pattern of sayings. It's just kind of weird and goofy. Plus also when Ethan goes on and mentions about the whole "I'm sorry, you're sorry" thing, and then Swanbeck is like, "Well, hey, where'd you get that saying from?" Because eventually, uh, Nekrovich says the exact same thing. So, so it's all about this like weird dialogue of looping things back around again. So let's cut past this because like I've kind of gotten into the very basics here. So of this whole dialogue between them. So let's kind of cut through all that. So next up, we have Swanbeck that goes on and hands Ethan this kind of recorded device to convince Naya how bad uh, Sean really is. And so eventually Naya will go on and look at this recording device and we'll see the plane crash. So that's the evidence that Sean had gone on to kill all these people. So now Ethan and Naya are argumenting, or an argument about Naya not wanting to do this mission, and and Ethan going on and saying that he wants her to do it, and and so Naya is like, well, hey, like she goes on and like throws it at him. It's like about the whole like feeling bad about the whole mission, and Ethan just like, well, feel better. So so Naya eventually, because she has much wiggle room, uh because she used to go on and say it's like, well, like a thief goes on and like and usually just kind of doesn't feel guilty after they've stolen, because in their mind they just kind of justify it. So we have Naya that's like, well, okay, you know what, if I'm gonna go on and if I'm gonna do this mission, like there has to be a way of how I can go on and how I can get back to Sean, and there has to be a really perfect way about going about this. So Ethan is to go on and through just a certain way of not exactly narration, but like through what happens next to kind of explain what Naya is going to have to go through. So Ethan goes on to eventually have Naya be arrested and do uh, these kind of photos of her being arrested. Ethan goes on to plant a tracking thing in her foot, which is kind of weird because you would think Sean would go on and have like a thing that would like track all that stuff, but I guess not. So we'll go on to have this tracker that can find people anywhere, and we'll then have it cut to the reason why Naya is going to this prison, because Sean will help get her out. Because Sean will go on and find out uh, through the uh, through the ways in which that he knows that Naya would be imprisoned, so he can go on and bail her out. The next thing we see is Naya is on this boat, making her way to uh, to Sean's place. So the next thing we see is that Ethan is going on and finding people that he can hire so that way he can go on and have people he can rely on to do his mission. Specifically, we have Ethan that just needs a helicopter pilot, and then also he goes on and has Luther, who was in the prior um, movie that, like, man, Ving Rhames, like, god dang, like, he ends up getting involved in every single one of these Mission Impossible movies. Like, it is so surprising how many of these movies that he's been in, because I would have thought at some point they would have just replaced him. Like, I didn't think that he would be such a staple in these films, but god dang, yeah, he's just the tech whiz guy that they just keep on using. And it's so fascinating because I'm like, man, Ving, like, I would never think that he would be involved so much so in this franchise, but yeah, he is. So we have Ving Rhames, who is Luther here, and we also have Billy, the helicopter pilot. So Luther and Billy are on this helicopter getting dropped by what seemingly looks like a farm. And so the two of them get out of this helicopter, and Billy introduces himself. And we then have Luther, who's to kind of shake hands with Ethan and realizes that he stepped in shit. And so Luther is just kind of upset here because, like, man, I just met this guy, and now I've gotten crap over my $800 Gucci shoes. So the next thing we see is Sean with uh, meeting up with Naya, and the whole entire time we have Luther who's racing to his computer to eventually track down where Naya is. And it's taking too long of a time to kind of get this computer to get a bird's eye view of where Naya is and what she's doing. So it's funny, like Ethan is going on and telling Luther, it's like, hey, can you do this any kind of faster? And Luther's like, well, this is the only computer on the planet that can do this stuff. Like, if anything, there's nothing I can find to get this done any faster. So Naya meets up with Sean, and then this whole like scarf thing where I think this scarf goes flying, and Sean grabs it, puts it back on Naya, and then eventually kisses her. Right then, that is when uh, Ethan and Luther see the footage, and Billy ends up saying like, "Oh, like well, that's definitely a way to greet somebody," and then Billy looks at Luther, is like, "Oh, well, you greeted me really well too." So as Naya and Sean meet, Naya is to mention how she's grateful for Sean, but yeah, she doesn't have any luggage. Naya ends up asking Sean how he found her, and he's like, well, like, you know me, I'm just magic. So we have Stamp, who's in this room with Wallace, going on and just kind of scanning Naya up and down to see if there's any devices on her, if she's wired, if anything, and they can't find anything. So Stamp, like, this girl is already rubbing him the wrong way, and so Naya goes on and is to make her way into Sean's room. And then this whole thing about, like, well, hey, here's this dress I got for you. And she is to take her clothes off to put this dress on. And then he's like, no, don't put the dress on. And so she's like, well, I thought you would want me to. And then he's like, no, later. So he just wanted to see her naked, evidently. So now Ethan and Luther are talking about like how Naya has already kind of set out to do what they asked her to do, and see how far she gets. And so now we go on, we have Luther, who is playing back that whole message from the scientist about the whole hero and villain and Bellerothon and Chimera, and molecular biology or biologist that Nekovich was. Nekorovich or Nekovich. So, so they're breaking down what he had gone on to say about Greek myths, and so eventually Chimera is to be this just kind of half lion, half serpent, and how it's just about like the battle between these two entities, uh, the Bellerthon and the Chimera. So next we see Sean and we see Stamp. Sean is to open up this mail, and there's to be 37 million that is going to be offered to him by all of what they're doing. So here's where Stamp goes on and starts talking to Sean after kind of closing this door. He starts talking about Naya and how weird it is that Naya is back with him, and how it's not like she was gagging uh, to try to get back with him. And the more that Stamp starts to continue to just, I think, like, the reason why Sean gets really upset here is because, like, when you go on and you kind of question this stuff, it makes Sean feel stupid. Like he's like, oh my god, this girl, like I just want to get back to her, and like I'm just blinded to everything else. Which Sean is not that. He's like, you know what? Like I realize that too. Like I'm not that stupid. And so when Sean is starting to feel like he's getting accused of being stupid, that's when he is to go on and grab Stamp by the arm and put uh, a cigarette clipper or cigar clipper to Sean's finger, and then eventually he cuts Sean's or Stamp's finger, and to just kind of prove it's like, well, yeah, I'm not that stupid. And if anything, like the further and further that Sean will have interactions with Naya, maybe they're gonna go on and start figuring out who she's in bed with, whether it's to be Sean or whether it's to be someone else. So we have Sean that is taking Naya to the racetracks. At first, we're just thinking that the two of them are together, and Sean might be at some point just feeling Naya out. But Sean is doing this ultimately because he is to have a business meeting with McCloy, who's to be the guy who would come up with the antivirus to Chimera's virus. So Sean goes on to have Naya pick this horse, and she ends up picking this winner. And come to find out, supposedly the race is kind of getting rigged, and that Naya, when Sean leaves, will start to get an earpiece in her ear, and Sean is going to talk to her and kind of get some intel as well as also uh, get some intel of which that Sean will have fed to McCoy, so that way uh, Ethan can kind of get ahead of the game and like, oh, okay, well, like, okay, like they have gone on to figure out the antivirus, so like we have to go on and we have to get the virus before they do. So Sean leaves from Naya, and we have Billy that goes on and hands Naya this paper and opens it up and gets his earpiece. Ethan is off in the distance with binoculars talking to Naya, and Naya goes on and mentions about the whole 37 million, and we have Billy that is going on and watching Sean and McCloy, and they're having a meeting there. So Ethan is going on and having Luther try to figure out who exactly is Sean talking to, and they figure it out that it's McCloy, that he's a CEO of Biosite Pharmaceuticals, and that he's uh, Nekrovich's boss. So they figure out that whatever Sean had just showed McCloy, that he had put that thing in his left pocket. So Ethan is telling Naya that she needs to steal, she needs to pickpocket, whatever it is, that Sean had just put in to his left pocket. So when Sean goes on and gets back with Naya, she then goes on to feel him up for money, but then also is to steal what she was trying to steal from him, which was uh, that drive device, or that whatever that thing was, to be put into the camcorder. So Naya's gonna go on and bid on another horse, supposedly, and Sean says, "Hey, before you leave, put another 1,000 down, because I feel like you're gonna win another race, because I'm sure most of these races are probably rigged anyways." So Naya goes on to eventually make a bid, and Stamp is following her. Ethan is telling Billy to stop Stamp so he won't follow her, and when Naya gets to the door, Billy closes the door on Stamp, having him smash and hit his finger. Billy goes on and Billy ends up getting choked by Stamp after having been smacked into the door, and Naya is to have Ethan appear from behind her. Ethan is to tell Naya to don't look around, and she does anyways. Ethan says, hey, you weren't supposed to look around. And Naya's like, what are you going to do? Spank me? Which is like, man, like, Naya's getting a little risque here. So Luther runs in to give Ethan this device for him to go on and be able to see what was on this device, as well as also Luther to record it. So Naya hands Ethan the disc or the whatever that drive is to see the footage. So Ethan watches it, and Luther has to have his own feed to where he can watch it himself. So they find the prior Doctor Bradsky. He had gone on to take in the Chimera virus, and he had died from it. And it starts to see the number of hours where this all is to kind of take hold and kill him. Ethan then goes on to hand Naya back this drive so that way she can go on and uh, hand it back to Ethan, or hand it back to Sean. But here's the thing: Naya will go on and put this in the wrong pocket, and Sean will figure it out because he'll feel it, but then also like, eh. So as Stamp gets ever so much closer to Ethan and Naya, it'll be perfectly timed that by the time that Stamp gets to Naya, Naya will be going on and making this bet on this horse, and Ethan will have disappeared. Naya gets back to Sean and slips back the drive or the device, the thing that she needed to get, back into his right pocket. So Sean goes on, makes his way back to his office in his house. Oh, I guess it's called a memory card. Uh, that's what I guess it was. I have no idea what it really was. So, because I'm not very familiar with those devices. Plus, also this movie is how many years long? So Sean tells Stamp exactly where it is, and so he takes it. So now we cut to uh, McCloy. McCloy is going on into his limo, and he's being followed by Wallace and Sean's men. McCloy is to have a cigar, and considering he's going to light it soon, he wants a window to go down so he can smoke a cigarette or a cigar. And McCloy notices that he can't roll the windows down. So McCloy makes his way to George, his driver, and is to go on and ask what's going on. All of a sudden, there is to be this gas that starts making its way into the limo, and McCloy, of course, passes out from the gas. So Ethan is to go on and tell Naya at the horse track that she has gone on to do everything that she should be doing here and that she needs to disappear. She needs to get away from Sean because really all that she was there for was just this intel of what he's doing, and they've now gotten to the point of figuring that out. So Naya just now needs to vanish. So Naya goes on and makes her way through the house, calling out for Sean, and Sean doesn't answer. Naya starts sneaking out and running off and ends up getting grabbed by a shadowy figure. We come to find out that this is supposedly Ethan, but we'll find out really otherwise. So, McCoy awakens in this hospital bed, and he goes on to speak with a ghost because he is to state that, hey, aren't you dead? Uh, and Nekrovich says, dead certainly, but dead is a little extreme. So Nekrovich and McCoy starts talking here. And Nekrovich says that McCoy is infected with Chimera and he'll only have a certain number of hours to live. And the more and more that they start talking, Nekrovich ends up mentioning about what he's really to go on uh, and have as his ultimate plan of making the cure uh, be so very well expensive. And he had the cure, he just needed to go on and make the Chimera to really just kind of have this whole thing kind of perfectly work well together. So McCoy goes on and confesses, and he did all of this just to make money because he knew that he'd be a billionaire. And so Nekrovich goes on and leaves the room, and McCoy goes on and passes out again. And Ethan mentions how he heard everything that he needed to hear, and we have supposed Ethan that goes on and speaks with Naya and tells her to do everything that Sean is to tell her to do, and to eventually run back into the house and continue on doing what she's doing. Naya tries to kiss Ethan, and Ethan kind of backs away and then kisses her on the forehead, and she runs off. Ethan then will go on and have this face of anger, and then is to pull off his hat, then eventually start to rotate his face, pulling it off, and it's revealed that it's none other than Sean, who is sad and emotional and crying, knowing that Naya had betrayed him. Oh no, how could this be true? So, of course it's true. So, we have Luther and we have Ethan that are putting it together about how Sean needs McCloy for the whole like, well, hey, one has the virus, one has the antivirus, a lot of them can make money, so out of this whole thing, so now that Sean knows who Nye is working for, Sean knows where Ethan is going to go, and he needs to go to Bioset. And if anything, Sean knows where exactly Ethan is going to approach as far as getting to the building, and it'll be a different route of which that'll be different from Sean and Stamp's approach. So now we have McCloy. McCloy wakes up in his limo by Billy going on and saying like, "Well, hey, you're home," and McCloy ends up asking the driver, "It's like, well, hey, where is George?" And the driver says, "Oh, he was sick, so like I kind of replaced him." So we have Ethan, we have Luther, and Billy. They're all running through the building that they need to go into, and Sean is going on and in his mind figuring out what Ethan is going to do. So the plan is that Ethan is going to go on through what is kind of in some ways to be called like a chimney. And Ethan is going to have Luther open up this quote unquote chimney for Ethan to slide down, and he'll only have a 40-second bit of time for him to get all the way down to where he needs to, and then the rope from Ethan will get released, and then the rope can go on and be retracted back to the helicopter, and then the helicopter will go on and just kind of be around the building if Ethan is to go on and need him. So Sean and Stamp are just going to go into the building, and they're basically just going to just kill every one of the security to make their way into the place that they need to. They're going to go through an easier way, but if anything, Ethan is not going to take that route because he doesn't want to kill people, as well as also he just doesn't want to get through the area that is very heavily secured. So Sean exactly knows where Ethan is going, that he's going to go to these areas that do have the Chimera, and he's going to go on and he's going to cancel them out. But if anything, there's going to be one Chimera left that Ethan is tempted to try to figure out what exactly to do with it. And then by that time, that's when Sean and Stamp break in through that area and prevent Evan or Ethan from trying to get rid of the last Chimera virus. So as Ethan goes on and makes his way from the quote unquote chimney and makes his way down, as Luther is to open up the chimney like doors or the chimney like kind of slit for Ethan to slide through. Luther is having problem opening those up, and we come to find that Ethan can't wait any longer, so he just starts going down. Luther conveniently at the perfect time opens these things up for then Ethan to kind of slide through or kind of slip through, and gets all the way down to a glass glass circular thing that he needs to kind of cut through to get past and drop down in its area. So Luther is to go on and tell Ethan that there's going to be 8 minutes because a generator is to be powered up, and it's going to interfere with their comms. So while that's going on, Luther informs Billy that Nia is in the building, but Luther cannot go on and explain this to Ethan because the comms aren't working. And the later and later this goes, like, Luther is like, well, yeah, like, if Nia's in the building, there's something up here. And, like, if anything, like, Luther just has to hope that the red dot will get away from the yellow dot in the nick of time. And if anything, he hopes that within after the 8 minutes, they can go on and explain to Ethan what's going on. We'll also come to find that Luther's van will end up being planted explosives on, and Luther would go on and notice from this rearview mirror, oddly, that there's going to be a bomb underneath his car because of the reflection of the water from underneath his van. So, plus also, Luther will go on and kind of hear this ticking, which kind of gives him a cue of like, okay, there's something going on here. Luther goes on and notices that there's a bomb underneath his car, so he goes on and scrambles to just get to his computer and tries to get that guy out of there. And the problem is, all of a sudden, his jacket is to be caught on some wires. So I'm like, wait a minute, like, why not just rip the coat off? Like, you only have a certain number of seconds. So by the time Luther gets out of the van, like, it basically like explodes so close near to him that eventually we just see that Luther is just covered in just black soot or whatever from that explosion. So because he was so near to it. So Ethan goes on after getting to the Chimera and going through this kind of almost like this mask and all of this kind of suit to make sure that he doesn't get any effects from this room. He goes on and gets to this Chimera and destroys some of it, but then also has to go on into this other area and destroy other parts of it. So, and that's where we have these guns with this Chimera that Ethan is trying to destroy, but the very last one, that's when Sean and Stamp break through this area to then start firing crazily. The last of the Chimera is to be in Ethan's hands, and then all of a sudden, the gun device that is to shoot this chimera is to have been broken from this safety case that it was in, even breaks through the glass room that Ethan is in, falls to the ground. Now there is just to be a lot of just gunfight here. Ethan goes on to have to shoot through all these guys. He slides down this rope to shoot these men. There's a lot of like sliding, and there's a lot of just like spinning and firing to try to get to this man. It's a lot of that. So eventually, Sean and Ethan start to have this dialogue back and forth, kind of doing this like catch up, like, well, hey, how's it going? And Ethan's to mention how he's finding a cold right now, and he's like, oh, poor baby, oh, that's too bad. So they start talking about how um, Sean had knocked off that whole plane, and if he would have just waited and figured out about how the doctor had a chimera on him, they wouldn't have had to go on through all these lengths to get here. That Sean would have already had the chimera instead of needing to come here to do any of this. So so Ethan ends up asking Sean uh like uh about the top bid of Chimera, and Sean's like, "Well, do you think you can make me a better offer?" And Ethan already knows that it's 37 million, and Sean is like, "Oh, we've been reading our mail, like who's been going on and who's been giving you this information? Oh, it must be Naya. So, like, you come out here, you bad girl." So Naya comes out, and it's revealed that Sean is holding Naya hostage. So Naya is to be used as a bargaining chip here. But like, well, hey, Sean is knowing that Naya is going to go on and get to the Chimera, and of course, Ethan won't shoot her because they're working together. So Sean is like, okay, well, if she goes and gets it, then I'll go on and like I'll kind of be able to like, well, hey, like Hunt's not going to do anything, so if anything, I'll get what I want out of this. So as Naya goes on to get the Chimera, Ethan is going on and telling Naya, it's like, well, hey, like as soon as you give this to him, he's probably gonna kill you, and he's gonna, or he, or he's gonna do something to you. So realizing how very much the middle Naya is, eventually her solution is to just take the Chimera and put it into her system. And for that, that makes her indispensable to Sean, and that she's worth 37 million to him. So she realizes that like he's not going to kill me now. Like Sean's not going to kill me. So Naya goes on and slide, and so she makes her way next to Ethan. And we now all of a sudden have so many people that are firing their guns. We even have a alarm go off because Ethan is to detonate an explosive. So all these guards are coming into this area and guns are just firing off. Further and further, Ethan realizes that there's no way for them to go on and get out of here together. And Naya says, like, hey, like, I know that you're thinking that we're not going to get out of here together. So Naya just tells Ethan to shoot her so that way they can resolve all this. And Ethan puts a gun to Naya, but just can't pull the trigger here. So instead, he goes on and tells her, hey, like, I put it on my watch, like, we have 20 hours. Like, I'll get to you and I'll cure you um, before that time is up. So Ethan throws his explosives, bursts this wall, and then heads out, guns blazing, uh, to escape through this hole for him to go on and thrust this parachute out to then escape. In my opinion, I'm like, couldn't have Ethan gone on to do almost the exact same thing with Naya? couldn't have Ethan had used Naya as basically like a human shield? Because they should not have fired upon him, and then the two of them could have escaped together. That's just my thought of like, well, hey, there's no way that they would have fired on Naya. So cut to in a car we have Naya and we have Sean. Uh, talking about how much money that Naya is gonna make off of her blood, off of Chimera, and that Naya is going to be a Typhoid Mary. And so Sean walks off, and Luther, Billy, and Ethan are coming up with a plan. Um, like, okay, Naya only has this X number of time, so they're trying to figure out. It's like, okay, like, so they have to get to Naya and give her the antivirus. Uh, but what happens if they can't? And Ethan is to say, it's like, well, hey, if we don't get to Naya, then Naya will get to Naya. And Billy's like, what do you mean by that? And Ethan says, like, well, hey, if we don't cure Naya, Naya is going to go on and try to kill her, end herself. So that way, uh, she'll go on and not be able to get the Chimera to go out. So it won't affect a number of people. So in turn, it will go on and have Sean not be able to win at the end of all this. So now we transition to uh, McCloy and Sean meeting at this very secluded base. So that way they can have this bank transfer and have this meeting uh, because uh, Sean is going to go on and talk to McCoy about his ultimate plan, that he wants to go on and put money into McCoy's company and have at least a good chunk of control over McCoy's company, because he knows that McCoy is going to make a ton of money off this whole virus and antivirus thing. So, but I'm kind of getting a little ahead of myself. So Ethan is making his way to this meeting, to this hideout, and he's finding out that there's quite a bit of security, and he ends up calling it risky. So Ethan goes on and finds one guard, and he ends up doing this like crazy like flip kick, and then he goes on to like do this like judo throw, and he goes on to do this like this kind of just flipping kick that lands on this guy's stomach, and he takes him out. So Ethan continues to this compound, this hideout, and finds this kind of this sewer grate, or this just kind of like thing he can open to go underneath. Uh, so Sean, McCoy, and a bunch of like men that Sean has, and McCoy has some scientists and some bank guys and a bunch of other people with him. So Hunt starts to go on and further take more of these security guards down. And at one point, we start to see these doves or these pigeons, and we see them start to kind of flock around or start to make noise. One of the security guards starts to call for Simon, the guy who was down, and so the guy goes on and investigates. So we have this scientist, this doctor that goes on to go through this microscope and finds that these people, through blood, have chimera, and also that their antivirus is to work also, to kind of just make this transition or transaction to be like completed here. So Sean ends up calling to his people to tell Naya that she can be cut loose, because at some point Chimera will be loose onto the world fairly soon, because Naya only has a certain amount of time left. Informing McCoy of what's going on also. Ethan gets intel from Luther about Naya and where she is. And that at this point the clock is ticking. So Sean goes on and tells McCoy uh, all of his planning, and that eventually he will still be a billionaire. But if anything, Sean's going to keep him under his thumb by kind of taking control of his company by buying shares. And the next thing we see is Ethan taking yet another guard down and taping his mouth. So Ethan goes on and uh, hucks this. It looks like a flashlight, but it's not. Like it's an explosive that can go on and be fired off. Uh, and so Ethan does. As soon as these guys get to the door, this explosive goes off, and Sean looks to the door, sees Ethan kind of walk past the door. So Sean tells Stamp to get all the men out there to go looking for him to kill him. McCloy is getting his bank man to transfer the funds over uh, to Sean, and Sean is telling Wallace, his computer guy, like, well, hey, you go on and you look up our bank information also, and confirm to me when this money is to be transferred. So we see Stamp running off with a couple of men trying to track down where Ethan is. And as soon as all of Stamp's men get out of frame here, all of a sudden Stamp is to go on and hear something that no one else does. Ethan is to be dangling on this, like, I think, pipe, and there's to be this dove that is to be right by him. Ethan is to try to figure out that Stamp is to figure out where he is. So, as soon as Stamp is to make his way into the opening where Ethan is, Ethan goes on flying with his feet and drops Stamp. As soon as Ethan and Stamp get back up, Stamp has a gun to Ethan's face, but Ethan has a grenade in his hand. Ethan drops the grenade and hucks it, or lightly hucks it. And both Ethan and Stamp are fighting while eventually the grenade goes off, thrusting them to the ground because of the huge impact of the explosion. Sean is to call out on his walkie to see if anyone's still alive while the transfer is still in progress. Sean gets a call from Stamp saying that he had gotten uh, Ethan, and Sean ends up asking, well, is he dead or is he alive? It's like, well, uh, he's a little bit more or less dead or alive. So Sean says, bring him to me. Wallace has to go on to say to Sean that the transfer has been complete, and Stamp is dragging Ethan to Sean. So Sean and Ethan are have this dialogue where Ethan is to say that Sean likes to get his gun off, and Sean is to say how Ethan likes to smile and likes to grin all the time. So this is to kind of rebring this back here within the time of which that Sean is going to shoot Ethan. Or who he believes is Ethan, because actually Stamp and they swatched bodies. They swapped faces, technically, because they will both have masks on. So Ethan here will actually be Stamp, because it'll be revealed that there's to be the cut finger on Ethan's body, and Stamp will go on and get the antivirus and run off with it, so that way he can go on and try to cure Naya. So, and Ethan's men will chase after him and try to gun him down. So, but back to this here. So, Sean goes on and looks over Ethan's body, who he believes is Ethan. And Stamp ends up saying, "Hey, I broke his jaw," so he's not going to say anything. But oddly, Sean still goes on and asks if he has any final words, or at least give him a big old smile. So Sean guns Ethan down, and then uh, Ethan's body is to turn, and Sean is to look at Ethan's hands, realizing that one of the fingers is to be bandaged. Like, oh no, that's Stamp's bandage. So here's where Stamp goes on, runs off with the virus, and reveals that it's actually to be Ethan underneath the mask. Sean is to be so angry that he's screaming at the fact that he had shot his own man. So now, Ethan is to go on and try to meet up with Billy so that way he can get picked up by the helicopter. As Ethan tries to get to the helicopter ends up getting gunned down. So I think what ends up happening here is Ethan ends up chucking the antivirus to Luther. Luther goes on and is to assist in the gunning down of 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 one of these men. And no, wait. Let me correct myself. Ethan, because yeah, Ethan keeps the antivirus. He keeps it because he has to go on and huck it to Luther by the end of here. So Ethan tries to give Luther the antivirus and he fails because there's too many gunmen blasting away. So Billy and the helicopter pull away here. Ethan goes on and explodes these tanks to then kill the security guard. Ethan goes on and tells Luther and Billy to kind of back off, but like just kind of follow him so that way like he can get their assistance whenever he needs them to. So further, Ethan is to go on and find all these men, and one of them are even on a motorcycle, and Ethan has to go on and kind of gun them down. Ethan finally goes on and gets on the motorcycle and starts driving off. Sean and his men start following him. So we find out that one of Ethan's or Sean's men, or men, multiple men, is to be at this bridge and they're going to try to cut off Ethan. Ethan tells Luther to clear the bridge for him so that way he can get past the guys in the car. So Luther tries to go on and tries to take up the men in the bridge, but he's just having difficulties to the point where he's getting mad. So he finally goes on to detonate the car and or destroy the car. It goes flying just in perfect time for Ethan to go on and drive past it. Ethan is being chased down by this other car, and Luther and Billy via helicopter are to follow this car and try to help Ethan out. And eventually Luther will get shot in, uh, or will be kind of grazed in the shoulder. He won't be actually shot. So Ethan figures out a way to take this other car out, but there's still more of Sean's thugs to come. Ethan makes the play to Billy and Luther instead of going on and following him to get to Naya and pick her up, because that's the kind of the better plan here. Basically saying, "Hey, bring her to me." Uh, if Ethan can't go on and give them the antivirus. So the next thing we see is just Naya, and she's uh, just walking to water, walking to this cliff. So now that Hunt is being followed here, he's trying to figure out ways to get all these cars behind him to, of course, stop following him. So he's like trying to get all these. He's like swerving to get these cars to stop these people from chasing him. Eventually, Ethan will go on and drift his way or spin his way into taking out other bad guys that are in certain vehicles to where it's only left to where it's between both Sean and Hunt here. Hunt goes on and starts blasting into Ethan's motorcycle, and I think he's actually quite a bit ahead of him, because he had gone on to take this just route that kind of got ahead of him, but then eventually he has to kind of turn around, and then Hunt is to be chased by uh, by Sean here. So here's where Hunt goes on and is to kind of twist his arm and is like blasting away from behind him. Really kind of cool scene here. So Ethan goes on and continues to get shot by Sean, even to the point where Ethan ends up kind of eating it and ends up smashing into uh, this kind of junker car. So all this comes ahead as the closer and closer that Sean and Ethan get here. Eventually, their motorcycles are kind of like they're trying to hit one another, like they're jumping over one another. But really, that's by accident because really, like Sean wants to go on and wants to hit Ethan so he can stop him from moving. So all of this will culminate with them playing chicken with one another. They'll play chicken, they'll continue to drive the motorcycles, and then they'll fly into the air and they'll smack into one another, and then they'll go down on the ground. Their guns will go on and fall into the sand and maybe will disappear. So it ends up becoming a combat here, some fighting going on, and there's some choking going on, and some pretty back and forth hitting here. Hitting and kicking, like it's pretty good, but it's also um, like Tom, I think, or Ethan here is doing, I think, more interesting combat, whereas Sean, like, I think is more uh kind of boxer, kind of like haymakers, and like it's not as uh probably as efficient as maybe Ethan, like where his combat is like, man, like yeah, he's gonna go on and definitely take out uh like Sean here, because it's just a completely different skill set. So as Sean continues to try to choke Ethan, and even Sean introduces a knife into here and starts cutting into Ethan, even cuts into his face. Sean gets a knife out and gets the knife ever so close to Ethan's eye, but the weight of power starts to twist and starts to change here, and Ethan gets the knife over Sean, and and Ethan or Sean tells Ethan, it's like, oh yeah, go ahead, go and use that knife. Uh, and starts talking about how Naya soon is gonna die. So Ethan goes on and throws the knife into the ground and starts beating the crap more out of Sean. And Sean goes into this, or Sean, Ethan goes into this line of just these wild, like kind of, like cartwheel like kicks, or like these kind of just very flashy kicks here. And Billy and Luther to go on and track down where Naya is, and they meet her on this cliff to be like, okay, like let's grab her. So Ethan goes on to do this move, which only looks like a wrestling move that I'm very familiar with, called the Rock Bottom. Uh, this is a move that Dwayne the Rock Johnson does. He goes on and he takes his foe, and he grabs him. So like your back is to him, and so he hooks him, and so like right here is like where your shoulder is. So like he kind of does like this, and then he like drops you, and like so like doing it in reverse, like your back is turned, and so he hooks you, and then he like drops you down to the ground. To you'd have to see the Rock do it, and you'd make sense of it. It's hard for me to show you here. Um, if anything, also Ethan does another move, which is to be a missile drop kick. So he, with both of his feet, he hits Sean, and then he like twists. So that's like a missile drop kick. That's not a normal drop kick, because a normal drop kick would be that he hits him, and then he like either goes like and he flips, or he like yeah. So missile drop kick is more like this, where like a drop kick is more like bah, and then just falls back. So further and further the kicking, and then Ethan is to want to do this final punch, and then he pauses and then walks away, because the focus should be on Naya. As Ethan walks away, he gets to Luther, throws the antivirus, and needs to focus his tension back on Sean because Sean now has a gun on Ethan. Ethan sees that there's a gun in the sand. He has it go flipping up, grabs the gun, shoots Sean, and then goes back to find out that Naya has been given the antivirus and she'll be okay. So the next thing we see is Ethan making his way back to Swanbeck. So Swanbeck is to mention how the only thing that Hunt didn't follow in his instructions is that they wanted a sample of the Chimera virus. And Ethan is like, well, like, I'm sorry, like, it just didn't pan out. And so it's like, well, of course not. Oh, okay, well. So, because all of the possible things of it was destroyed. But I think, like, Hunt did that on purpose because he didn't want ugh, that virus ever to go into the wrong hands or ever uh, to have it in either uh, the those people's hands either because he doesn't trust them. So Swanbeck goes on and asks Ethan, it's like, well, hey, now that this is all done and over with, what are you going to do now? And Ethan's like, well, maybe I'll go on another vacation and I'll let you know where I'm going. And Swanbeck's like, well, don't tell me where you're going because then you're not going on vacation. So Ethan goes on and leaves Swanbeck and makes his way to this just huge crowd of all these people, and it looks like they're having balloons, they're flying kites. So Ethan goes on and meets up with Naya. They have this kiss, they have this hug, and we just kind of further and further pan out here as Naya and Ethan are walking through all these people, and the movie ends. So that's how I think I'm going to have this review end. So that way it's just a little bit under the 2 hours, of which this review is to, of course, be the similar amount of time of this movie. Thank you for all for going on and watching this for however long that you're going to do it for. 30 seconds, X number of minutes. It's all to be very appreciative. So I'm grateful for anybody taking the time to watch any of these reviews. I don't know if I had much of real like bit of information to really share, like besides maybe like, hey, like this isn't exactly a new idea, and that there are other movies that have gone on to do the same. But if anything, maybe people are to want to go on and talk about these Mission Impossible movies because maybe they have a favorite. Maybe uh, if this one does well, maybe I can justify covering Mission Impossible 3. I don't know. If anything, in all brutal honesty, because I always like to go on and be truthful to everybody. Why I was to go on and want to review Mission Impossible 2? Because it honestly had came up on my stuff to want to check out. So I'm like, sure, I'll go on and I'll do that because I watched the first one. So I was like, all right, like I'll check out the sequel because there's a lot of times where I'll go on and I'll just put some like I'll put like all the movies that has ever been a thing, or just Mission Impossible would just be a keyword, and eventually I'll find out like what's to be like the most popular, or what is to be the hit thing for that time, and it end up being Mission Impossible 2. Like I'm sure when I go on and I'll put this out now, like it probably won't matter. Um, because eventually it just had already its time, and then like normally when I get my hands on something, by the time I get to it, like it's no longer popular, no one cares. But maybe this will be different. Who knows? Um, Either way, I was entertained by this movie. I did enjoy it, so hopefully you'll go on and get something out of this. Hopefully, you'll probably check it out. You'll check out this movie. You'll check out the first Mission Possible even if you haven't seen these in a long time. But either way, I'm gonna get out of here. So goodbye, everybody. Bye, buddy.